My mother died young. To celebrate her birthday, she had gone to Barcelona together with my dad. They were going to spend it with golfing, eating tapas and drinking Rioja and hanging out with friends. While waiting for a tourist bus at Plaza Catalunya, my mom suddenly turned to my dad and said, "Something is happening to me." And then she fell to the ground. She was dead before the ambulance arrived. The following months, I got to experience seeing my mom at the morgue, arranging a funeral for the very first time, calling my uncle to tell him that his little sister died. I also went through a long medical investigation diagnosing me with the same disease that my mother died of at the age of 55. All this together led me to a deep crisis, and I felt like I was in the middle of a storm. And you know those kind of cozy storms, when you're at home inside, under a blanket, and maybe you're having a cup of tea, and you're waiting for the rain to pass? Let me assure you, this was not that. This was a thunderstorm, the kind of storm that kicks your ass. The kind of storm that turns you upside down, shake you to your core, and leave a mess long after it's gone. So I was struggling and fighting for finding my way forward. And I wish I back then would have known how professional handles crisis. In fact, I learned all about dealing with personal crisis as a spin-off of my work in professional crisis management, because I have spent my whole career working with crisis and crisis management within companies, organizations, and authorities. When people hear the word crisis, many think of school shootings, terror attacks, or forest fires. And yes, those are crises, absolutely. But the term is so much broader than that and doesn't have to be synonymous with death or destruction. In the business world, a crisis can be an unplanned IT interruption, a large reorganization, or a CEO with bad judgment that is spending the company's money in a non-ethical way. If we were to look into the future, my firm belief is that the crises are going to get more common, because the ongoing digitalization, the climate change, and the political situation, these are all examples of the way our world is constantly changing, which in many ways is fantastic because it allows us to broaden our perspectives, grow our networks, and find new solutions to many of the problems we see today. But these changes, they also pose us new threats and increases vulnerability for all of us. And I'm going to give you a concrete example, and this is about a man in his late 40s. Let's call him Mr. Moneybags, because Mr. Moneybags, he is a wealthy man. He's a business owner. Now imagine that one day you are reading in the newspaper about a global IT company that has been hacked. The media, of course, reports this bad news wide, since the company's customers are losing both money and data, and the share value is dropping. Unfortunately, this is Mr. Moneybags' company, and as a result, he just lost 30% of his assets in less than a week. But why should you care about Mr. Moneybags' finances? He's still a wealthy man, right? Well, because Mr. Moneybags is your employer. And since he lost a lot of his money, his liquidity is weak, and now he has very little money in the bank to pay salaries, and now he has to lay off people, you, among others, and suddenly you just lost your job. And this is just one example, and it's a very realistic one, to be honest, because this is the world we live in today. After meeting more than 100 leaders in different organizations and talking to them about their experience from leading through a crisis, I can roughly divide them into two groups. The first one where the organizations got ruined by the crisis. And the second one, where the organizations actually came out stronger. And by stronger, I mean, yes, they had an increased share value, but they also had an increased trust from customers and coworkers. And they also got good press during the crisis and afterwards. So what did this second group have in common? One thing: they were prepared. They had put time and effort into building their resilience. They had worked on the basics like processes, procedures, cultures, and values, but they had also created an understanding of what a crisis is, how people react, and what really defines good leadership when you are in the middle of a storm. So what can we learn from the corporate sector when we are dealing with our own personal crisis? Are there any mistakes we can learn from or strengths to be inspired by? And the answer is, of course, yes. I believe that when it comes to building resilience, we can learn a lot. What would happen if we were to look at our own personal resilience the same way that many companies look at theirs? If we would focus on building it before something terrible happened, like an airbag in our lives, protecting us from the worst injuries. And I really want to emphasize one thing here, because resilience doesn't bring any value in itself, but it creates a sustainable future. A future that won't be destroyed by unplanned or unforeseen events. And I'm not saying we should walk around focusing only on our next crisis or catastrophe, because that would be awful. I'm saying we should put some work into building resilience, and it will give us huge benefits when things go awry. Building resilience creates a sustainable future. If I were to name 3 things you can do to build your resilience, that would be: 1, you can build your financial resilience by saving up for some crisis capital. It doesn't have to be a lot, but just knowing that you are able to pay the phone bill when you are struggling with a crisis is comforting, because then you have at least one thing less to worry about. Number 2, you can build your physical resilience by having a routine of eating, sleeping, exercising okay. Handling tough times will never be easier if you're worn out and out of shape. We all know this. It is this simple, so just do it. Number 3, you can build your mental resilience by defining what is important to you in your life. When you are at rock bottom, what are the things that really matter to you? Is it close relationships with friends and family? Humor? Authenticity? Time on your own? There are a lot of things I wish I would have known when I lost my mom. But we don't get to go back and change things. We can only learn, grow, and move forward. And today I am so much more equipped to handle my next crisis, my next storm. And I hate to tell you that sooner or later a storm is going to hit you too. And that sucks. But how well you get out of that storm depends on how well prepared you are. And this is where we can learn from the corporates. So prepare financially, physically, and mentally now. And then when the storm comes, you will be able to get through it more easily. And who knows? You might even come out stronger than you were before. Because that is the power of resilience. Thank you.